Hello and welcome to the fall equinox of 2023 palming party. My name is Nathan Oxenfeld, and I'm going to be hosting our palming party today. If this is your first time at a palming party, I like to guide us through about 10 or 15 minutes of palming, relaxation, visualization. And that is immediately followed up with another 15 minutes or so of questions and answers. I'll be taking a look at the chat as it's coming in. So feel free to type in your questions after we do the palming session. And I'm going to actually be keeping this one a little bit shorter than usual. Sometimes these go up to an hour, sometimes even more than an hour. But we're going to try and keep it a little closer to about a half hour today. So without further ado, we're going to just jump right into it. And I wanted to just welcome you and hope that you had a fulfilling and sunny summer. If you happen to be in the northern hemisphere, if you're in the southern hemisphere, you're just coming out of winter, coming into spring. But since I'm in the northern hemisphere, and specifically in northern Vermont, today I'd like to do a maple syrup visualization. Vermont is very much known for its maple syrup production, where they tap the maple trees and extract the sap and boil it down to this really sweet syrup. And so we're going to kind of use that as our theme today. And the point of this is not to just palm our eyes and sit in the dark. We're meant to be palming and then actually activating this inner vision, this insight, with the help of our memory and our imagination and visualization. Now, you really only tend to visualize things when you're relaxed. So if you feel like you're trying too hard or it's not working and you feel like stressed or strained or you want to try and force it, just come back to my voice and just kind of keep relaxing into the breath and into the palming. And you might notice that certain mental pictures begin to form or appear. It might be fleeting. They might kind of appear and disappear. But that's a lot of how this Bates method natural vision improvement works, is actually by turning on this inner seeing as a way to influence the outer seeing. Now, the practice is called palming because we place the very center of our palms right over the center of our eyes. So as you get into the position, just make sure you're not, too low. So it's just the fingers over the eyes, not too high, so it's the heel of the palm into the eye. We don't want any pressure on the eye. We just want to be cupping the hands and blocking out the light while being supported in our shoulders, in our elbows. So I always like to use my palming board, which is a nice tool that allows me to rest it on my desk here, so that when I place my elbows on it and I go into the palming, there's no slouching happening. My spine is actually nice and elongated. My crown is kind of reaching up towards the ceiling. So if you don't have a palming board, you can always just stack up some books on your desk, or maybe even just kind of lean forward a little bit. Just make sure that you're hinging at the hips so that you're not kind of crouching or having your head be too heavy on your hands. But we are going to go ahead and just jump right into it. And I'm inviting you now to remove glasses and go ahead and find yourself in your most ideal, comfortable palming position. And instead of jumping right into the visualization part, it is nice to maybe take a minute to calm down the physical side and just let the physical eyes adjust to the darkness. You might even still be seeing some after images of the screen or the light that you saw. So we just want to give some time for that to dissipate and disappear. And maybe this is also a chance to do a quick little body scan to make sure your shoulders are down and relaxed, your neck isn't tight, your diaphragm, your belly is free to move and breathe. We can maybe start to tune into how the breath is entering and exiting. Maybe feel where you're seated, the connection with the chair. Maybe even feeling your feet touching the ground. Or maybe some of you are actually lying down. You're welcome to lie down on the ground to do palming as well. But once we take a moment to settle ourselves into the physical palming, we're going to now move into the visualization part where we actually start to activate that inner vision. So let's all pretend like we're bundling up, putting on some jackets, and we're heading out into the woods, into a small forest where there's lots and lots of different types of trees, but dispersed throughout are these beautiful maple trees. And we can tell it's a maple by the leaves and the bark. And we're going to pretend like we're actually going to make some maple syrup. And that starts by tapping the maple tree. So we're going to pick up a drill, and we're going to drill a hole into the side of the maple tree. And we're going to attach a hook to the tree that we can hang a metal bucket right beneath the hole that we just drilled. So that as the sap coming up from the roots that the tree is pulling up from the earth, most of it continues to rise up to the tree, the tops of the trees, the branches, but some of it gets diverted out of that hole and drips into our bucket. So maybe you can even hear the sound of that liquid dripping drop by drop into the bucket. And it takes a lot of maple sap in order to make maple syrup. So maybe one tree isn't enough. So let's go search for another tree until we find another good candidate. We can drill another hole and place another metal bucket hanging beneath it from the side of the tree. And as we're doing this work, we're just taking in some deep breaths of that nice, crisp autumn air, listening to the ambient sounds in the forest. Now, we can either fast forward through time and imagine that these buckets are now filled, or maybe you have some buckets that you already placed that are ready to be emptied. So in each hand, you're going to remove one of these buckets that's full of this sap water, this liquid that poured out of the tree into your bucket. And we're going to carry it into our sugar shack. So our sugar shack is this small wooden structure in the forest there with a chimney coming out. It's a simple structure. And inside the sugar shack are some boiling pans. So there's a stack of firewood in the corner, and we're going to build a little fire in the section of the boiling pan to add some heat and begin to evaporate some of this liquid. Because in order to make maple syrup out of maple sap, we have to boil it down. We have to concentrate it and evaporate the majority of the liquid until all that's left is this rich, thick syrup. So getting that little wooden fire started, some flames starting to flicker and starting to put off some heat as we're developing some nice embers. And while that's getting going, we pour that maple sap water into the top of the pan, this open pan with the fire beneath it. And immediately steam starts to rise up and begins to fill this little sugar shack cabin with this warmth and this sweet smell in the air as well. So maybe you're picturing the water starting to bubble and simmer, and plumes of steam are rising up into your face, warming you up. And it takes a good amount of time. It takes a good amount of boiling this liquid for it to concentrate down. So once again, we might hit fast forward a little bit and sort of move into the process where now probably like 90% of the water content has evaporated. And what is left is this amber colored liquid, this maple syrup. And so at the end of this pan, there's a little spout. So we can get our glass bottle, empty glass bottle, place it under the spout, and open the spout to allow the finished product to start to fill up this glass bottle with this beautiful colored liquid. Also, just knowing how tasty it's going to be when you take a taste. So why don't you do that? Why don't you go ahead and either dip your finger in or grab a little spoon, or maybe you picture you've got a little plate of pancakes there, and you just try tasting this maple syrup that you just harvested from the maple tree. And maybe now you can go ahead and let that fire burn itself out, and we can clean out that pan of any residual product. And we can exit the sugar shack and close that door behind us. And as we begin to bring this maple syrup visualization to a close, I want you to keep palming your eyes, but just reflect on your experience in terms of, first of all, physically, how are your eyes feeling now after covering them up, blocking the light, feeling the warmth from the hands? And physically, were you noticing any movement happening in your eyes as you visualized? Was there any blinking happening or shifting? Or did you feel like your eyes were a little bit more stationary? So we do actually want them to be free to move. We don't necessarily want them to be stuck. But those are just some of the physical things you can notice. In terms of the mental side of your palming experience, just reflect on the inner aspect in terms of the mental pictures. Listening to my voice, did that help form any pictures, whether it was of a tree, of a leaf, of a metal bucket, of the fire, of the syrup, any of that stuff? All we're doing is giving some time and some space for the mind's eye to see. And the idea here is that as you prepare to transition back out of palming from your insight back to your eyesight, we want to take maybe some inspiration from that palming, both physically and mentally. So as you keep your eyes closed, but remove your hands from your face and allow your eyes to slowly readjust to the light, you're maybe holding onto that feeling of warmth. Maybe you're preserving that sense of calm and peace and relaxation. And maybe you can even maintain some of that mental imagery. Maybe you can maintain some of those mental pictures that you were seeing in your mind with your eyes closed. And maybe you can keep imagining them or thinking about them even when your eyes open back up and you start to reconnect with the physical world. And maybe to kind of make that connection here, I can show you the bottle of maple syrup that I've got right here. That beautiful amber color, actually in a glass bottle shaped like a maple leaf. So not sure if this was anything like you were seeing in your visualization. Hopefully it wasn't some store-bought plastic bottle. I guess I've become a Vermont maple syrup purist. But I would be really curious to hear any responses either in the chat, whether it has to do with your palming experience, whether it has to do with the mental side of the imagery you experienced, or maybe some of the physical side of how your eyes are physically feeling. But ultimately, the reason why we would spend 10 or 15 minutes palming and visualizing is with a specific intent or goal in mind, which would be vision improvement, which can mean many different things. Most people consider eyesight improvement as vision improvement. So just, taking stock of how things are looking as you open up and come out of palming. But kind of like I mentioned, it's also about how you're feeling and how the eyes might feel different now than before. It might be temporary, where maybe they feel good for a little bit and then they do start to kind of strain or things like that. But that's why this is kind of a practice. It's kind of I only host these palming parties once a quarter, but I really hope you're doing it much more often than that. And if anything, kind of a daily routine. So we're going to move into our Q&A section, and I'm just going to kind of go over to the chat and see if you want to type anything in, whether it's questions or feedback or experiences in relation to what we did together today. Or in past palming parties, I also spend time just answering any questions related to natural vision improvement. So at the very beginning, I was seeing some people just saying hello and saying where you're tuning in from. So appreciate everybody sharing that. I was like kind of getting a sense of who's here and where you're watching from. Yep, awesome. Let's see. So Shelly chimed in, said, doing visualization walks in real life helps me to look around and notice things in the visualizations. Very cool. So I like that term, visualization walks. So it's like you could either just go on a walk outside to do a walk, or you could do a walk outside for the purpose of kind of giving you more materials to then take into your visualization. And we can also walk outside and not really see. We can be, I was in a session with someone this morning about, walking to go get a cup of coffee at a coffee shop, right? And there's two scenarios. You can walk and get the coffee and walk back and not really see your surroundings fully. You might not even notice certain things along the way. And certainly you may not even be noticing the oppositional movement that Dr. Bates talked about with the whole swinging thing. Or you can walk and get that cup of coffee. It's the same activity, same goal, but along the way to and back, you could be noticing movement in your periphery. You can be picking up on details of things that you're passing by, and it totally transforms that walk. Not only that walk experience, but then, like Shelly said, then when you get home and you do some palming or some vision practices, then you also have some of that to take with you. And I think it would also have an inverse relationship probably too, where the more you palm and practice visualizing, looking around and noticing details around you, the next time you physically walk, I would imagine that you're probably naturally doing that as well. So kind of a two-way street there. Love that, Shelly. Thanks for sharing. Joy has a good question. Would palming one eye at a time still be beneficial? Absolutely. Yeah. So we just did palming both eyes together, which is, I guess you could say it's a little limiting because you can't really do a whole lot when you're palming other than visualize, which is good. I mean, we don't necessarily want to be like multitasking too much, and it is good to just press pause and kind of stop everything and slow down and go within like we just did. But there's also the kind of more practical version of palming. Like let's say we are watching a TV show or a movie, and it's like, oh, I'm going to palm my right eye, and I'm going to keep watching it with my left eye, for a minute or two, and then I'm going to switch. Now I'm palming my left eye, I'm watching my show or whatever. And so that way you can either go through that 30-minute show or 90-minute movie with both eyes open the whole time and get to the end of it and be like, whew, my eyes need a break. They need to palm. Or you can be palming one eye at a time, not missing what you're watching. By the time you get to the end of that thing, your eyes are probably going to feel better. So yeah, you can totally do one-eyed palming. Hey, Carla, glad you and Dan could tune in today. And looks like you're the second person from colorful Colorado. Justina said they're tuning in from Colorado as well. Gwen said, this is a great reminder to palm more often. I feel very relaxed and my eyes got extremely clear. Hey, I'm happy I can give you that reminder. And it kind of goes to show you how sometimes it's easy to forget these simple things. We can get through our whole day or even our whole week and realize like, I kind of forgot to take care of my eyes like they want me to. So really glad we could kind of refresh that and for you to kind of see the proof of why it's important, right? Because it's like we don't necessarily want to just palm and not really get any benefit from it. We want to see how it actually changes things. All right, we got T. Rodux. Thank you from Germany. How many minutes a day would you recommend doing the palming exercise? So we just did it for just over 15 minutes together. And I would say that is a kind of an ideal length, but it's not always practical. And so my answer to that question would be pretty much to kind of fit in really as much as you can realistically, even if it's an accumulation of really short sessions. Like for a moment, let's all palm again for 10 seconds. If you palm your eyes, take an exhale. So you breathe out, empty the lungs, squeeze your belly, your diaphragm, all the air out, and then relax your belly. Let the breath back in. One more exhale. And then come back out of palming. And that was 10 seconds. And if you do that 10 times, 20 times, that, in my opinion, is actually probably maybe even better than sitting down and doing like an hour-long session, for example. So it's really about these little accumulations of the relaxation. And like I said earlier, it's not just about feeling a relaxation while you palm. It's about, can I take this with me out of palming? So great question there. Patricia from London. Thank you, Nathan, for a very interesting palming practice. Yeah, I was really anticipating this one today because I've never actually like physically made maple syrup myself, but I have watched videos about it. And so I have kind of seen the process. And because when I moved here to Vermont, I was just learning about the area and kind of learning how all this stuff is made and people are so proud of it. So it might not hurt for you to actually look up how to make maple syrup or, maple syrup process or sugar shack or things like that. And it's pretty interesting to watch how it's made. And then once you see that, you go back into the palming and now you have even more tangible things to kind of bring into the visualization. But I did know that it might have been kind of alienating some people because some of the things I was describing, maybe people have no experience with or any background of those things. So, but it was just an example of something that gives your mind something simple to focus on, which can then create this space of relaxation. Christine also said, liked visualizing making the maple syrup. Yeah, thank you. Let's see. EF said, in this session, could feel the texture of the tree, smell the freshness of the air. I could visualize the clothes I was wearing as well as texture. That's awesome. I love how you are bringing your other senses into this. So not just what you're seeing when you're palming, but what does that air smell like? What's the texture, the sense of touch, sense of smell, so, and you were hearing my voice the whole time, the sense of hearing. So it's like this orchestra, right? All of your senses, coordinating together to work together. So thanks for chiming in with that. EF. Mary Ellen said, Joy, I love the idea of palming one eye at a time. I feel I will get a lot more palming in during the day. I love to hear that, because the last thing I want is for this stuff to feel inaccessible or feel like you don't have enough time. Like, that's one thing I hear from a lot of people is like, I really want to improve my vision, but I'm really busy. I don't have time to sit down and palm my eyes all the time, but you can still get stuff done, still use one eye while this eye is getting a rest, some nice darkness. So yeah, love that you're getting the gears turning, figuring out some strategies and some shortcuts here. Hey, Nuala, glad you could tune in. Glad you enjoyed the palming session today as well. Yeah, Maria said, the TV comment reminds me to ask you to talk about TV or reading posture and head tilting. If it's okay to watch or read while lying on the side. Very good question. Head tilting usually has to do with things like astigmatism, where, as opposed to like nearsightedness or farsightedness, astigmatism would actually be a result of maybe more of a postural thing or an alignment thing, where if we have a head tilt while we read, or if we're like laying on our side while we're watching a movie or something like that, your eyes aren't level with what you're looking at, right? If you're looking at a screen that is level like this, and then your eyes are like this, you can see how one of my eyes is below the level and the other eye is above the level. And as things are moving on the screen, or as you're reading the book, which is on this level, but your eyes are tilted, it's causing this potential imbalance to develop in the muscle tone. So what I do when I started learning about this, because I had astigmatism and I wanted to reverse it and reduce it. So I started to pay more attention to how I was holding my head when I did things like reading my books, looking at my phone, looking at my computer screen, watching TV. And I don't want you to be afraid that if you just get comfortable on your couch, you're going to develop astigmatism. That's not what I'm saying. But it's if it's kind of chronic, or if it's sort of habitual and it happens the same way every time, and it's like day after day, year after year, you're kind of developing this imbalance. So if anything, if you're watching a show on the couch like this, maybe 5 minutes later, switch positions and go over here like this, right? And see if we can kind of balance it out, or just, is it comfortable to be more in alignment with what you're looking at? So, those levels with the little air bubble in it, where you put it on the thing, and if it's not level, the air bubble is not in between the two lines. Think about that with your eyes. If my head is tilted, then that air bubble, is not in the middle. So if my head is on center like this, then that air bubble would kind of rest right in the midline. And that's kind of the best position for the most relaxed use of the eyes. So just pay attention to that with your books, with your tablets, your Kindles, your screens and stuff. Just especially if you already know that you have a sort of a chronic head tilt. You're like, yeah, I tend to tilt my head, even if it's just a little bit, in one direction or the other. So I think that's a really good question for everybody to really start thinking about, and maybe even making some slight adjustments to kind of correct your alignment and posture for what feels good. Couple more here before we close out. Dylan said, hello. It was a bit difficult to get into the visualization, as here in South Africa, it is springtime and pretty warm. Yeah, I sort of said that at the beginning, how we have to take that into account, our Southern Hemisphere friends. So, Dylan, you might want to actually go back to one of the my spring equinox palming parties, because all the replays of these are on my YouTube channel. So that might be a little bit more appropriate for where you're at in the world. But thank you for tuning in from South Africa. That's awesome. Hey, June. June said, very relaxing, and appreciate the treats of colors, smells, and flavors in the visualization. Yeah, once again, bringing in our other senses can actually really enhance the experience, and maybe even like facilitate the formation of more of these vision pictures in the mind. Oh, Mary Ellen said, I love the 10-second palming. Yeah. Like pretty much, how can we make this easy, right? We don't want this to feel hard. We don't want it to feel like inaccessible. We want this to feel like something that just becomes an automatic thing that we do. It's just something that our eyes need, and it's something that they like and they enjoy. So, yeah, even if it's just 10 seconds, they will appreciate it. Patricia said the only problem was being in a forest, it was quite dark. So, keep in mind the example that I give in these palming parties is just an example, and it's actually meant to inspire you to almost kind of come up with your own so that you can actually get creative and let your imagination flourish, right? Because this is what I came up with, but I want you to also tap into what you come up with. So you can brighten it up, you can change the environment, you can, do some gardening, some farming. It doesn't have to be exactly what I say or what Dr. Bates suggested or things like that. So it's a good start, but I get really excited when people really start to come up with their own. Let's see. Hey, Gene, glad you can make it today. Let's see. Is it best to do a visualization like you did versus just thinking while palming? Um, Kind of depends on the purpose of the palming. Like, um, let's say the purpose of palming is to relax your eyes, relax your mind, and maybe even improve your vision, like get some clarity, like Gwen shared earlier. Then I would do the visualization. That's kind of the purpose of the visualization, is to like relax and focus and get the clear flash and the improvement. But I've also used palming as a way to think or to contemplate something or to go through my to-do list. Cover my eyes and this is actually something I usually do in the mornings, actually. So like when I wake up before I get out of bed, usually I'll palm my eyes and I will visualize my day. So in a sense, it is thinking, I'm thinking about, okay, which vision students am I meeting with today? What classes am I teaching? You know, what kind of visualization do I want to share in the palming party? So it is me kind of thinking, but I'm visualizing it, right? I'm laying in bed, I'm visualizing, okay, I'm going to get up, I'm going to make my breakfast, I'm going to let my dog out, I'm going to log onto my computer. I'm picturing that stuff as I'm thinking about it. So, but in my opinion, that might not necessarily guarantee that it relaxes your mind, especially if what you're thinking about is stressful. But sometimes it is important to just give yourself that time and space to think about that thing. So, um, interesting question, and yeah, it's great that you're kind of contemplating the different ways to do this. Oh, June also followed up and said that it's also my favorite season, autumn. Also like your explanation of the different ways of visualization walks. Yeah, I love that term. I appreciate Shelley for throwing that in the ring. And I agree with you, June. I'd say that fall is probably my favorite season as well. All right, we're going to close out here in just a minute, but a couple last questions coming in or comments. Olgi said, thank you for the great suggestions. I love the half palming, new interesting experience. Greetings from Vienna. Awesome. Glad you're able to tune in from Austria. That reminds me, I did today want to mention, Vienna is where my colleague Gabrielle Baresh Teichmann is from, and I'm a part of her Color Lights World project, our group that does workshops and classes about color therapy and light therapy. And we're actually doing a free event in October, on October 10th. It's going to be a Zoom event where you can tune in and get a little sampling of the work that we do. And then a month later, on November 11th and November 12th, we're actually doing the color and light immersions. It's an online retreat. So it's going to be me teaching a section about eye healing and using color and light to help with our vision. But it's also going to feature 5 or 6 or 7 other practitioners who are going to be really going even deeper into the whole color therapy and incorporating light and color into our healing process. So why don't I go ahead and put her website into the chat while I'm thinking of it. I think I spelled that right. It's colorberesh.at, because since she's in Vienna, it's that Austrian website. So yep, you can find links to that, and I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't led a retreat in a while, and I'm really excited to be doing a deep dive into this topic and learning a lot myself as well. So I'll probably be sharing more about that as we get closer. But let's see here. Laura said, aloha from Hawaii, and thank you for the morning palming session before I start my day. I noticed that the movement in my eyes in the early morning is slower than midday. Yeah, sometimes it takes a little time for your eyes to kind of wake up, and just like other parts of your body. But yeah, it's like if you just capture that little special moment first thing in the morning, hopefully you'll notice that over time and with practice that you wake up and your eyes are already moving swiftly and shifting and blinking and doing all these good vision habits, as opposed to waking up and they feel kind of tired and sluggish and we need to kind of like rev them up, so to speak. But it's a process. And the more you practice and the more you rest and relax, the more those eyes kind of learn how to do that on their own. So, and it must be early morning there in Hawaii. So yeah, thanks for tuning in early. Ooh, great idea, Sally. Sally said, I will add palming to listening to audiobooks. Perfect. That is such a good idea. Audiobooks, podcasts, guided meditations, visualizations like we did today. But yeah, when you listen to the audiobook, let your imagination thrive, right? If you're palming and you've got this dark blank canvas, whatever's being described in the audiobook, you get to picture it and you get to see it, right? And I mean, and that's why books have captivated humans for so long, is it helps us tap into that imagery and that imagination and the playfulness of it too. So yeah, definitely have fun with that. And I would encourage everybody to try that. Oh, thanks, Mary Ellen. So I want to thank you for your informative podcasts too. I love to listen while I'm in my car. They have clarified some of my questions from your book and from other eyesight books that I have read. So you might be referring to the Better Eyesight Podcast, where we're actually reading through those original Better Eyesight magazines that Bates and his team published 100 years ago, and then doing some nice discussions about the materials in between. And it's just been so fun to do that project. And I mean, it's really deepened my understanding of the true Bates method as well. So if you haven't listened to that, definitely great for commutes and or another great thing to listen to while palming. Thank you, Tan May, saying you're an inspiration. Thank you for all the work you do. It's my pleasure, and it's very gratifying. And there's nothing I'd rather be doing than hosting these palming parties and helping people learn these really simple strategies to lead to betterment and improvement. Ooh, I like your name there. Finding joy in your vestibular journey. Said thanks for the info. I'm gonna have to check your account out because I like the connection between the ocular system and the vestibular system and our balance and how that's all related as well. So maybe you also kind of enjoyed what we were talking about with the head tilt thing and the alignment of the head and things like that. But that does bring us to the end of our fall equinox palming party. The next one will be our winter solstice palming party. I believe that's on December 21st or 22nd. It kind of flips back and forth between those days. So I'll be announcing that and inviting you to come to that. And I hope you have a very, very enjoyable fall season, or spring if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. And like I said, if you want to look into those events we've got coming up in October and November, there are some really exciting things happening this fall. So you can reach out to me or find out a way to participate. Otherwise, keep your eyes peeled for new YouTube videos. I'm actually in my new space here. I recently moved, so I'm excited to be kind of setting up a new filming setup and putting out more content and more naked eye podcasts, things like that, Bates Method 101 videos, and the like. But really happy you joined me today for the fall equinox palming party. I hope that you have a very relaxing weekend, and I will look forward to seeing you in our next one.